You believe that your exhaustion is a byproduct of your labor or a consequence of your sleep schedule, but deep down in the quiet corners of your psyche you sense a gravitational pull that has nothing to do with physics and everything to do with the metaphysical weight of the collective consciousness surrounding you. Look closely at the way the world is structured and you will realize that society is not merely a collection of individuals acting independently but rather a singular biological organism that seeks homeostasis above all else, meaning that when one cell tries to vibrate at a higher frequency or when one individual attempts to ascend beyond the prescribed limitations of their station, the surrounding cells do not applaud, but instead they instinctively latch onto the outlier to drain their kinetic energy until they return to the baseline temperature of the group. This is the phenomenon of the parasitic lattice, an invisible grid of social and emotional connections that functions not to connect us for mutual growth but to redistribute bioenergy from the strong to the weak, ensuring that no single entity accumulates enough power to threaten the stability of the average. You have felt this every time you shared a massive ambition with a friend or family member and suddenly felt a wave of fatigue wash over you, as if the very act of vocalizing your potential opened a valve through which your vitality escaped. This is not a metaphor, it is a mechanism of social physics where the collective subconscious perceives high ambition as a threat to the tribe's cohesion and activates a suppression protocol that operates through doubt, criticism, and subtle emotional manipulation. The golden figures surrounding the awakened man in your mind are not enemies in the traditional sense, they are vessels of the lattice, unaware that they are being used as conduits to siphon the electrical charge of your will. They reach out with strings of concern and cords of advice that look like support but feel like chains, because their true purpose is to ground your high-voltage potential into the earth of mediocrity. To understand success, you must first understand that you are operating within a hostile energetic environment where the default setting of the human herd is to harvest the energy of the outlier to sustain the comfort of the masses. This energy harvesting happens in the micro-interactions of daily life, where a sudden silence after you speak or a passive-aggressive comment serves as a hook to pierce your energetic field and cause a leak in your resolve. Most people live their entire lives as batteries for the lattice, fueling the dreams of a system that requires their compliance rather than their greatness, and they die wondering why they never had the energy to break free. The truth is that you cannot escape a prison you do not see, and you cannot stop a drain you do not feel, so the first step in reclaiming your destiny is to visualize these invisible tendrils that connect you to the collective and realize that your fatigue is the evidence of a theft taking place in broad daylight. The mechanism by which the parasitic lattice operates is rooted in the primal evolutionary need for safety in numbers, but in the modern era it has mutated into a psychological cage that weaponizes empathy and social validation to keep you trapped in a cycle of underachievement. When you begin to improve your life, you disrupt the energetic equilibrium of your immediate circle, and this disturbance sends a distress signal to the subconscious minds of those around you, triggering a defense mechanism that forces them to act as anchors. They do not do this out of malice but out of a desperate biological need to maintain the familiar patterns of existence, because your elevation highlights their stagnation and creates a cognitive dissonance that they can only resolve by pulling you back down or by draining your energy until you are too exhausted to continue your ascent. This is why the path to greatness is often described as lonely, not because there are no people but because to keep your energy intact you must sever the subconscious cords that allow the lattice to feed on your drive. Every time you seek validation for your goals, you are essentially handing the remote control of your emotional state to the collective, allowing them to dictate the voltage of your motivation. The lattice feeds on reaction and emotional engagement, so when you argue with a skeptic or try to justify your vision to a blind crowd, you are pouring your limited bioenergy into a black hole that will never be filled. You must understand that the human nervous system is a transmitter and receiver of energy, and the lattice operates on a frequency of fear, scarcity, and conformity which is incompatible with the frequency of success, dominance, and creation. The golden threads you see in your mind's eye are the neural pathways of social obligation that have been reinforced since your childhood, teaching you that to be a good person means to be accessible and available to everyone at all times. This accessibility is the trap, because true power requires isolation and conservation of energy. The masters of history understood that to build something monumental they had to withdraw from the noise of the lattice to incubate their ideas in a vacuum where the parasitic drain of the collective could not reach them. By engaging in the trivial dramas and low-level conflicts of the ordinary world, you are voluntarily plugging yourself into the harvesting machine and donating the very fuel you need to escape the gravity of the average life. The feeling of heavy legs or a foggy brain when you sit down to work on your legacy is often the physical manifestation of this psychic resistance, a sign that the lattice is increasing its pull to prevent you from reaching escape velocity. To override this, you must become aware of the transaction occurring in every interaction, asking yourself if you are receiving energy or if you are being harvested to maintain the status quo of a dying system. As we go deeper into the architecture of this hidden control system, we must recognize that the parasitic lattice is not just comprised of individuals but is reinforced by the institutions and media we consume, which act as amplifiers for the harvesting signal. The new social media algorithms and the corporate ladder are designed to keep your sympathetic nervous system in a state of chronic low-level agitation, which makes your energetic field porous and easy to penetrate. When you are in a state of fear or outrage, you are effectively broadcasting your energy outward into the lattice, contributing your life force to the collective hallucination of chaos and helplessness. The successful mind is a closed circuit that recycles its own energy rather than broadcasting it to a world that will only consume it without giving anything in return. You must learn to become an energetic black hole to the outside world, appearing dark and unreadable while burning with the intensity of a supernova on the inside. The golden figures that surround you in the visualization represent the seduction of social comfort because it feels warm and safe to be part of the herd, but that warmth is the heat of decomposition as your dreams rot away alongside the dreams of the masses. The hidden rule of success that the elites never speak of is the ruthless curation of their energetic environment, which involves the surgical removal of people, habits and information streams that serve as extraction points for the lattice. This is a painful process because the lattice has installed guilt as a firewall in your mind, making you feel selfish or arrogant for withholding your energy from those who demand it. However, you must realize that you cannot save a drowning man if you allow him to pull you under, and the collective is always drowning in its own mediocrity, looking for a lifeline to grab onto. By allowing yourself to be harvested, you serve no one, but by preserving your power and actualizing your potential, you become a beacon that can eventually guide others, not by giving them your energy but by showing them that it is possible to disconnect from the parasite. The threads that bind you are spun from your own need for approval and your fear of being cast out, but the reality is that the wilderness of isolation is where empires are built. The lattice fears the individual who needs nothing from it because that individual cannot be controlled or drained and becomes a glitch in the matrix of conformity. Your fatigue is not natural, it is engineered, and the moment you decide to cut the feed, you will feel a surge of vitality that you haven't felt since childhood returning to your body as the siphon is finally broken. The final phase of understanding the parasitic lattice is the mastery of the ascendance protocol, which is the deliberate and conscious act of sealing your energetic field and repurposing your bioenergy solely for the construction of your vision. This does not mean you must live in a cave, but rather that you must move through the world with a deflection shield that allows you to observe the collective madness without absorbing its frequency. You must learn to simulate compliance while maintaining internal rebellion, nodding your head to the expectations of the lattice while your mind remains fixated on your ultimate objective. This is the art of being in the world but not of it. When you stop reacting to the provocations of the environment, you starve the parasite that has been feeding on your emotional responses, and slowly the golden strings that bound you begin to wither and snap. The people around you will sense this shift and they may intensify their attempts to trigger you, but once you see their behavior as a mechanical response of a threatened system rather than a personal attack, you become immune to their influence. The energy you reclaim by unplugging from the lattice is the raw material of reality creation, and it is this surplus energy that allows you to bend probability in your favor and achieve results that seem impossible to the drained masses. Success is not a matter of luck or talent, it is a matter of energetic volume, and if you are leaking 80% of your power to the social environment, you are trying to win a race with a broken leg. The hidden rule is that you must become a sovereign entity, a universe unto yourself, where the laws of the collective do not apply and where your will is the only gravity that matters. As you reclaim your energy, you will notice that your physical health improves, your mental clarity sharpens, and the path forward becomes illuminated by the light of your own focused consciousness. You are no longer a battery for the system, you are the architect of a new reality, and the lattice can no longer hold you because there is nothing left for it to grab. This is the ultimate freedom, the liberation of your soul from the subconscious harvest of the herd, allowing you to rise like a golden god, not to be drained by the statues around you but to animate them with the sheer force of your example. The cords are cut, the heavy lifting is done, and now you are free to ascend to the height that was always intended for you before the world told you to stay down. The video ends here, but your work has just begun. Once the initial cords are severed and you begin to retain your vital energy, you will encounter the second layer of the lattice's defense mechanism, which is not aggression but seduction, because when the system realizes it can no longer drain you through conflict or doubt, it attempts to reabsorb you through the temptation of comfort and the false promise of good enough. This is the plateau of mediocrity, a dangerous psychological zone where the lattice rewards you with a moderate amount of success and stability in exchange for you ceasing your upward climb toward total dominance. You will find that suddenly the people who opposed you begin to accept you, but only because you have stopped threatening their reality by pausing your ascent, and this acceptance is a trap designed to calcify your potential into a permanent state of average achievement. The hidden rule here is that the collective does not mind if you do slightly better than them, but they are terrified if you become something entirely different from them, so they will offer you the golden handcuffs of social validation to keep you tethered to the ground. In this phase, your internal chemistry is the battleground because your brain has been wired by evolution to seek the safety of the tribe, and the lattice exploits this biological vulnerability by flooding your system with dopamine whenever you conform and with cortisol whenever you venture too far into the unknown. To break this final internal shackle, you must undergo a process of alchemical transmutation where you take the raw sexual and creative energy that you are no longer wasting on social friction and use it to rewrite your own neurochemistry, forcing your mind to find pleasure in the pain of growth and to find safety in the danger of isolation. The golden figures in the visualization change their tactic here. They no longer pull at you with hands of need, but they offer you cups of poison disguised as nectar, whispering that you have done enough, that you should rest, that you should not be so obsessed. This is the siren song of the lattice, designed to lure the ship of your destiny onto the rocks of complacency. You must understand that the energy you have saved is highly volatile, and if it is not directed toward a massive purpose, it will turn inward and destroy you through anxiety or self-sabotage, which is why the path of the outlier requires a relentless forward momentum that cannot be paused. You are now operating in a high-pressure environment where the air is thin and the company is scarce, and the lattice tries to convince you that this solitude is a punishment when in reality it is the prerequisite for sovereignty. The ancient texts and hidden philosophies often speak of the dark night of the soul, and this is nothing more than the period where you have fully unplugged from the matrix of the collective energy but have not yet fully connected to the infinite source of your own power, leaving you in a void that tests your sanity and your resolve. It is in this void that most people break and run back to the comforting arms of the parasitic lattice, willing to be drained once again just to feel the warmth of the herd, but you must stand firm in the cold light of your own vision, knowing that the silence around you is not emptiness but the blank canvas upon which you are about to paint a new world. That I am the final analysis. The ultimate purpose of understanding the parasitic lattice is not merely to escape it but to master the physics of reality. To the point where you become a gravitational center in your own right, reversing the flow of energy so that instead of being harvested you become the generator that organizes the chaos around you. When you have fully integrated the mindset of the sovereign individual, you no longer need to shield yourself from the collective, because your frequency is so high that the lower vibrations of doubt and fear cannot resonate with you, and the people who once drained you now unknowingly begin to orbit you, seeking the light that you emit. This is the paradox of power, that by ruthlessly cutting yourself off from the need for validation you eventually receive the admiration of the world, not because you asked for it but because you became the undeniable proof of what is possible when a human being refuses to be a battery for the system. The golden threads that once bound you are dissolved and replaced by a radiant aura of authority that commands respect without speaking a word, and this is the state of existence where the hidden rules of success cease to be theories and become the automatic laws of your daily life. You realize that the lattice was never truly an enemy but a testing mechanism, a universal filter designed to weed out the weak and the uncommitted, ensuring that only those with the absolute will to power are allowed to access the higher levels of reality creation. The struggle, the fatigue and the loneliness were the resistance training required to build the spiritual muscle necessary to hold the weight of your crown. Now you walk through the world as a glitch in the simulation, a free agent who sees the strings on everyone else and has the compassion to understand their plight but the wisdom to never let them entangle you again. You have hacked the code of social dynamics and reclaimed the bioenergy that is your birthright, directing it with laser precision toward the legacy you are building, leaving the parasitic cycle behind in the dust of history. The visualization of the thumbnail is now complete, not as a tragedy of a man being drained but as the origin story of a man who woke up, realized the game and decided to stop playing by their rules so he could invent his own. The world is still asleep, dreaming its collective dream of mediocrity, but you are awake, your eyes are open and your energy is fully yours to command. This is the end of the broadcast, but it is the beginning of your reign, so take this knowledge, seal it in the vault of your mind, and go forth to conquer a world that is desperate for a leader who cannot be broken. The transmission ends now.